She realized too late. The paper she signed for her son carried his betrayal between every line. Her hand froze above the page, just for a second. The mug on the counter sent up a thin line of steam, twisting toward the open window. Outside, waves broke against the rocks, soft, distant, like they didn't care. Alex was talking fast, the way he always did when he wanted something. His voice had that old sparkle, once pride, now manipulation. "It's just a small investment, Mom. You'll finally get that peace you've earned," he said, tapping the papers on the table. His hands moved like he'd done this before, confident, rehearsed, almost kind. She didn't read every page. Maybe she should have. But it was her son, the same boy she used to walk to the bus stop, the one who called her my rock. Her hand hesitated once over the pen. Just once. Then the nib touched the paper, leaving her name in careful, fragile ink. "See? Easy," he said, folding the documents and sliding them into his leather folder. "You won't regret this." For a few weeks, she didn't. He called often, sent pictures of meetings, smiling faces, business lunches. "We're close," he'd say. "Just need one more investor." She laughed at his ambition, proud of how sure he sounded. She kept her phone close for days, waiting for the next update that never came. Then the calls slowed. Then they stopped. Her texts stayed unread. His voicemail changed, shorter, colder. "Hey, leave a message." Bills kept coming. Her savings account showed less than $100. The first sting wasn't anger. It was disbelief, like waking up in the wrong house. She went through her desk drawer, looking for the folder, for something she might have missed. The paper edges were crisp, untouched, but the words she'd once ignored now pressed against her eyes. Authorization of transfer, liability release, personal consent. The house was quiet, except for the hum of the refrigerator, the kind of silence that feels like judgment. Her hand hovered over the phone. She typed his name, then deleted it. Outside, a wave hit the rocks, hard enough to shake the glass. And that's when it settled in. Trust wasn't lost. It had been handed over, signed, and sealed. The next morning, she called him anyway. No answer. Just that casual tone on voicemail. "Hey, I'll call you later." He never did. A week passed. Then two. Then a message finally came. "Busy right now, Mom. Everything's fine. Don't worry so much." She listened twice, not for comfort, but for the sound of his voice, clipped, defensive, tired of pretending. By the fourth week, the mailman brought an envelope from the bank. She tore it open standing by the sink. Words jumped off the page. Account closure, final balance, $0. 00, transfer completed. The paper trembled in her hand. She set it down carefully, like it might burn through the counter. She tried to call again. This time, he answered. "Alex, the bank." "Mom, stop." He cut her off, breath heavy like he'd been pacing. "You don't understand. It's temporary. The money's moving through accounts, that's all." "Then why does it say it's closed?" A pause, the kind that stretches into truth. "Because you don't know how these things work," he said, louder now. "Just trust me, okay?" And then the line went dead. Her hand stayed on the receiver long after the click. The sound of the ocean outside felt different, heavier, colder. That night, she couldn't sleep. She replayed every detail of that afternoon at the kitchen table. His tone, the rush in his voice, the way he'd touched her shoulder just before handing her the pen. It all clicked now. It wasn't reassurance. It was distraction. The next day, she opened her old laptop, the one she hadn't used since retirement. She logged into her account. Access denied. Password invalid. Her breath slowed, steadying against the pulse in her throat. This couldn't be a mistake. Not from a stranger, not from him. She opened the drawer and pulled out a small brown envelope. Inside, the original copies, her signature in neat blue ink. The smell of paper mixed with the faint salt from the window. Then the phone rang. Not her son this time. Another voice from a past life. Linda? It's Carol. I still work at the bank. Can we talk? Her fingers tightened around the papers. Something inside her shifted, a quiet click, like a lock turning from the inside. The next day, she met Carol at a small cafe near the bank. The kind of place where no one asks questions. The air smelled like burnt espresso and disinfectant. Carol looked older, sharper somehow, like the years behind a teller's desk had turned her into a quiet detective. I checked your old file, she said, keeping her voice low. Alex didn't open a company account. It's in his name. Personal. Linda stared at her coffee, the surface trembling from the hum of the refrigerator behind the counter. Are you sure? Carol nodded once. The transaction trail's clean. No fraud from the bank's side, but it's deception. The contract he had you sign is legally binding. You gave him control. Linda didn't answer. She just folded the napkin on the table, slow, precise, as if neatness could make sense of it. Do you still have copies? Yes. Good. Keep them dry, flat. Don't mark them. The words hit her like a manual for battle. Back home, she laid everything out on the kitchen table. The afternoon light fell across the papers, thin and yellow. Every signature, every stamp. Her handwriting so steady it almost mocked her. That night, she sat in her old office chair, opened a fresh folder on her laptop, and began naming files. Transaction 1. Account summary. Authorization copy. Her hands didn't shake. The rhythm was calm, methodical, the same way she used to audit company ledgers 20 years ago. She found the online form for financial fraud reporting. The cursor blinked, waiting. Her mind replayed Alex's words. Trust me. She typed instead, fraud by relative. Unauthorized personal transfer. Evidence attached. When she hit submit, the printer behind her came alive, spitting out confirmation pages one after another. Each sound, mechanical, certain, clean. It didn't feel like revenge. It felt like clarity. Then she stopped, mid-motion. Her phone lit up. A message from Alex. Mom, I heard you've been asking around. Please, don't make this worse. She read it twice. Then once more, slower. The same word echoed in her head. Worse. She clicked on the email attachment she'd just saved and sent it to the district attorney's office. No hesitation this time. The courthouse smelled like old paper and cold air. The night before, she thought maybe he'd call. Maybe it wouldn't come to this. He didn't. Now she sat 2 rows back, hands folded around a thin file. Not out of nerves, but habit. Years of balancing ledgers had trained her to stay still when everything else moved too fast. Across the aisle, Alex walked in wearing a dark suit that didn't quite fit. Too new, too stiff. His hair was slicked back like he'd practiced being confident in the mirror. He gave her a brief look, a son's glance that used to mean apology, now empty as a receipt. The clerk called the case. The shuffle of chairs, the scrape of a pen against wood, tiny sounds that filled the silence. When the prosecutor began speaking, it was all language Linda knew. Unauthorized transfer, false representation, personal gain. Each term dropped like a gavel inside her chest. Alex shifted, leaning forward as if ready to explain it all away. He even smiled once, that same half grin from her kitchen, when he'd said, "You won't regret this." But when they played the recording, the room changed. First, her voice, calm and trusting. "I just want to help you, honey." Then his, cheerful, sharp, rehearsed. "You already have." The sound cut off with a hard click. The grin cracked. The jurors watched in silence, the kind that doesn't fade. She didn't look at him. Not when his lawyer whispered. Not when the prosecutor slid the printouts across the table. Her blue ink signature stacked beside his digital one. Evidence and trust, side by side. When the verdict came, it was quiet. Restitution ordered. Assets frozen. Case closed. Alex turned once, maybe to speak. His mouth opened, but no sound came. The bailiff motioned him away. Linda stood slowly, the file still in her hand. The chair legs scraped behind her, one small, metallic sigh. Outside, sunlight hit her face like something foreign. Cars passed, people laughed, life went on. She waited on the steps for a long minute, watching the courthouse doors close behind him. For the first time in months, she exhaled, steady, full, without trembling. The house was quiet again. Not empty, just quiet in a different way. The kind of quiet that didn't accuse anymore. Boxes were gone, papers filed, the printer unplugged. She kept one folder in the drawer, labeled case documents. Nothing more. The rest went to storage, like any closed chapter should. Morning light spilled across the counter. She made coffee, slow and unhurried. The sound of the kettle filled the kitchen, soft and rhythmic. Outside, the ocean was calm. The tide had pulled back, leaving a long line of wet sand that glimmered like metal. She sat on the porch with her cup, the same spot where she used to wait for his car, months ago, back when she still thought distance was temporary. Her phone vibrated once against the table. Alex, calling. The name stayed on the screen, familiar and foreign all at once. She didn't move. The sound kept going, one ring, another, then silence. She turned the phone over, face down. The wood felt warm beneath her palm. Her gaze drifted toward the ocean, that wide, patient line between now and what used to be. She thought about signatures, how they mean both trust and responsibility, depending on who holds the pen. The wind shifted, carrying the faint hiss of waves. She closed her eyes for a moment, breathing it in. There was no anger left, not really. Just a kind of space, clean, earned, final. The papers had returned what they took. Not the money, that was numbers. What she got back was quieter. Something like ownership of herself. A seagull cried overhead, short and sharp, and the sound disappeared into the wind. She reached for her coffee, now cooling, and took a sip anyway. The ocean kept moving, steady as a metronome. Behind her, the phone lit up once more, then went dark. She stayed there, listening, to nothing but the world carrying on. For the first time, the silence didn't feel like loss anymore. Just hers.